Okay, so tonight we're diving into a story that could be huge EE.
Yeah, this is a big one for sure.
We're talking about the East Coast port unions.
From New York to Texas,
All of them.
the whole thing.
Yeah. Going on strike.
And not just like at some point they're going on strike at midnight tonight.
Yeah, so by the time some people are listening to this, it'll already be happening.
It's already happening.
And this is one of those things where we say it impacts everything, and we mean everything.
We really mean everything.
The food you eat.
The gas you put in your car.
That new phone.
Yeah, if you were thinking about waiting for like a sale or something on a new phone,
It's probably not going to happen.
it's probably not going to happen because all of that comes through these ports.
At some point.
Yeah, at some point, everything comes through these ports.
Okay, so to really dig into this, we are diving headfirst into one of our favorite sources.
This should be interesting.
It's a WallStreetBets thread.
Always a good time.
So, alongside any serious concerns,
Yeah.
expect
There'll be some serious concerns.
that's also
A lot of speculation.
a lot of
Some wild takes for sure.
yeah, and probably a few rocket emojis in there too.
Definitely some rocket emojis.
But that's part of the fun, right?
Is it what they do?
Exactly.
But it'll be interesting to see like how people are reacting to this news.
Because they don't always get things right. But it's interesting to see how they react.
Yeah, you get that like really raw, unfiltered reaction.
Exactly.
So it's a mix of, financial forecasting, but then also gut reactions and
Pure WallStreetBets energy.
yeah.
Okay, so let's get into the specifics of this strike. It kicks off tonight, October 1st.
Right.
And honestly, nobody really knows for sure when it's going to end.
Yeah, that's the big question mark right now.
There's one commenter who's claiming to have some inside info.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they were saying that they knew someone who worked for a commercial shipper, and there were rumors of a 2-week duration.
2 weeks.
But, I mean, who knows?
That's a long time.
It is a long time.
Especially when you think about how much stuff comes through those ports every single day.
Every single day.
Like, even just a small disruption can have a huge ripple effect.
And people on WallStreetBets are already bracing themselves for some serious price hikes.
Oh, yeah, they're freaking out a little bit.
Which, you can't blame them.
Right? Not at all.
Everything's going to skyrocket, seems to be the general consensus.
Pretty much, yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, yeah, that makes sense.
It's supply and demand, right?
Exactly.
If the supply goes down,
The demand goes up.
prices go up.
Exactly.
But here's where it gets kind of interesting.
Okay.
There's no real agreement on what this means for the market as a whole.
Interesting.
So some users are predicting a market rally.
Which they call
A green day, of course.
a green day.
Gotta love the Wall Street bets lingo.
So stock prices going up.
Yeah, their thinking is that big retailers saw this coming,
Interesting.
that they stocked up on goods in advance.
So they're thinking short-term pain.
Short-term pain, but that
Potential long-term gain.
long-term gain, exactly.
Which is very on brand for WallStreetBets.
That's how they think.
But of course, not everyone agrees with that prediction.
Not even close.
Because there are plenty of users who are bracing for a downturn.
Yeah, they're worried about major supply chain disruptions.
Which, to be fair,
Is a valid concern.
it's a very valid concern.
It's like this thread is a tug of war between I'm going to be rich and we're all doomed.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically WallStreetBets in a nutshell, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
But I do appreciate that even with all the market talk and, the memes and everything, there are still these glimpses of the human side of the story.
Yeah, it's not all just numbers and graphs.
Like there was one commenter who said they worked at the port of Houston
Oh, wow.
during that acid spill.
Yeah, that was awful.
And all they wrote was morale hella trash.
Oof. Yeah.
And it's like, that's the kind of thing that just it's easy to forget when you're caught up in the economics of it all.
It's a good reminder that there are real people who are affected by this.
Exactly.
Their lives are going to be disrupted.
And it's not just them, it's their families.
It's their livelihoods.
Yeah.
It's a big deal.
Okay, so amidst all of this, everyone's really curious about the union's demands.
What are they asking for?
Yeah, what is it that's got everyone in such a knot?
Right.
And it seems like the big sticking points are better pay
Okay.
and a halt to automation.
Makes sense.
But here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
There's a comment mentioning that the union,
Which union is it?
it's the International Longshoremen's Association.
Oh, the ILA?
Yeah, the ILA, they actually rejected a 50% wage increase offer.
50%.
50%.
That's huge. You can
Uh-huh.
imagine the reactions to that.
Oh, yeah.
Some people are like, they're being greedy.
You take the money and run.
Right?
But then there are others who are saying
They deserve more.
they deserve more.
50% isn't enough with inflation and everything.
And then you've got another group chiming in with the whole just automate everything problem solved.
Which, of course, opens up a whole other can of worms
Oh, yeah?
about the future of work and...
What does it even mean?
Yeah, like what happens to those jobs?
It's a whole thing.
It is.
And speaking of complex situations, someone brought up the 1998 Australian waterfront dispute.
Oh, yeah, I've heard about this.
I'm not super familiar with it.
So basically, the government and the employers, they basically teamed up
Oh, wow.
to replace the striking union workers.
Like a power move.
Yeah, talk about a power move.
Wow.
So it's like we've got this potential economic turmoil.
A labor dispute.
Historical echoes.
It's all swirling around.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
I can see why Wall Street Bets is so obsessed with this story.
Yeah, we too.
It really is a story with huge implications.
Huge.
Like, it really highlights this global shift that's been happening, where it's like this balance of power between labor and technology and this whole, like, interconnected web of global trade.
It's a lot.
It's a lot, and it's kind of fascinating and terrifying at the same time. Like, where does it all go?
Right, and speaking of global shifts, some users are bringing up how this could actually be good for certain countries.
Oh, interesting.
Because they're saying that, like, companies are already kind of shifting away from Chinese manufacturing and looking at other countries.
Like who?
Like Thailand and Korea as alternative sources. And this strike could just be like the thing that pushes them over the edge.
Oh, wow. So it's like this accelerates the timeline.
Exactly. And then it's like, okay, what does that even mean for the future of global supply chains?
Right. Like, who comes out on top in that scenario?
Exactly.
And who gets left behind?
It's a lot.
It's a lot to think about.
It is. But, okay, let's bring it back down to what everyone on Wall Street Bets really cares about.
Okay.
The economic impact.
Right.
We're already seeing people compare this to the COVID-era supply chain chaos.
Oh, no.
Like, people are already freaking out about empty shelves and prices going through the roof.
Yeah. I mean, can you blame them?
No.
Like, we all saw what happened then.
It wasn't pretty.
Not at all.
Someone even said, like, if we end up with even 2 months of those COVID-era supply chain issues, we're screwed.
People remember those empty shelves, like that feeling that you go to the store and you can't find what you need.
It's like this weird underlying anxiety.
Yep, exact.
Someone even threw out this stat, and I don't know how accurate it is, but they said that each day of the strike equals 5 days of supply chain delays.
Oh, wow.
So if that's true,
then
we are in for a wild ride.
And it's not just about those immediate shortages either.
Right.
Economists are worried about the long-term consequences, too.
Like what kind of stuff?
Well, like prolonged disruptions like this, they could fuel inflation.
Right.
Lead to job losses in other industries that depend on these goods coming in.
It's like a domino effect.
Exactly. It's a ripple effect, but on a massive scale.
And, like, what about all the other industries that this is going to impact?
Right. Like, who else is going to get caught in the crossfire?
One user was talking about the trucking industry. Because they were saying this is going to be huge for long-haul trucking because they've been struggling since all the interest rate hikes.
Right.
But now everyone's going to be desperate to move goods by land.
So it's like this weird silver lining for them.
Yeah, it's like a very specific group of people who are probably pretty happy about this.
Maybe. But even then, it's like, at what cost?
Right.
Because if the cost of shipping goes up,
that gets passed down to the consumer.
Exactly.
So it's like, are they really winning?
It's hard to say.
It is. And it's fascinating to see all these users trying to, like, game out those chain reactions.
Oh, yeah.
And, like, speculate on which sectors are going to benefit and which ones are going to take a hit.
It's like they're playing economic chess.
It really is.
But with real-world consequences,
Yes.
which is kind of terrifying.
It is a little bit, but also, like, even with all the doom and gloom, there is this thread of dark humor that runs through the whole Wall Street Bets thread.
Oh, I'm sure there is.
Like one person asked, so if shipping costs explode because of this whole supply and demand thing, wouldn't the shipping companies just get richer?
I mean...
It's cynical,
but
it's a valid point.
It is a valid point, and it's like...
It's true.
Even in a crisis, there are winners and losers.
Always.
And it's usually the people who are already struggling who end up bearing the brunt of it.
Which brings us back to those workers on the docks.
The ones who are actually making this whole system work.
Exactly. It's so easy to get caught up in the economics of it all.
Right.
That we forget about the human cost.
Absolutely.
These are people who are fighting for better pay.
Better working conditions.
A say in their future.
Exactly. And their actions.
Their willingness to do this.
To take a stand.
It could reshape everything.
It really could.
Not just in the shipping industry.
But across all sorts of industries.
It's a big deal.
It's a really big deal.
It's like, it can be easy to get lost in all the, the big picture stuff.
The economic theory?
Yeah. and the speculation.
The Wall Street bets of it all.
But at the end of the day, this is really about people.
It is.
Like real people's lives.
It's about their livelihoods, their families, their ability to just like put food on the table.
And what's crazy is that what happens on these docks on the East Coast could have ripple effects.
Oh, yeah.
Across the country.
For sure.
Maybe even the world.
It's all connected.
It's wild.
It really is.
That's why we wanted to bring this whole thing to you today.
To try and make sense of it all.
Yeah. To break it down.
Understand the potential consequences.
Explore the different sides of it.
Because it's complicated.
It's very complicated.
And there are no easy answers.
Nope.
But it's important to at least try to understand what's going on.
And I think that's what's so interesting about that WallStreetBets thread.
What do you mean?
It's like you see all these people.
You're all just trying to figure it out.
Yeah, like they're analyzing, they're speculating.
Making predictions.
And sometimes even just trying to find some humor in it all.
Which you gotta do sometimes,
like, yeah,
right?
You gotta laugh a little.
When faced with the unknown, sometimes laughter is the best medicine.
Exactly.
Or at least a coping mechanism.
Right, because it's like, what else can you do sometimes?
It can feel like the world is spinning out of control.
For sure.
Especially when you're talking about things like global economics and supply chains and labor disputes.
It feels very big.
It is big.
And it's like, what does this all even mean for the future?
Right.
Like, what happens as automation?
That's the big question, isn't it?
It is. Like, what happens as that becomes more and more prevalent?
Not just in ports.
Everywhere.
In all sorts of industries.
It's the million-dollar question, for sure.
Because on the one hand, you have this potential for, like, increased efficiency.
Right.
Potentially even safer working conditions if you're taking humans out of potentially dangerous jobs.
But then there's a whole other side of it.
Which is
job displacement.
Exactly what happens to all those workers who are replaced by machines.
It's like, we don't have an answer for that yet.
Not really, and it's something we need to figure out.
Like as a society.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's not going away.
Automation is here to stay.
So how do we adapt?
Right. We need to be thinking about things like retraining programs, job creation in new sectors.
Finding ways to make sure that everyone benefits from these technological advancements.
Exactly. Because technology isn't inherently good or bad. It's how we use it that matters.
It's about finding that balance between progress and protecting people.
I think that's a good way to put it.
And it brings us back to this East Coast port strike.
Full circle.
Because it really is this stark reminder.
Of what?
Of the power of collective action.
Right.
The importance of fair labor practices.
And the need for open dialogue.
Between workers, employers.
Policymakers. Everyone needs to be talking to each other.
Because if we don't talk,
things fall apart.
It's true.
And nobody wants that.
So as we're all going about our day, maybe picking up some groceries or checking the news, take a moment to think about those workers on the picket lines.
The ships waiting to be unloaded.
The whole intricate web of global trade that connects us all.
It's easy to forget about these things in our day-to-day lives.
It is.
But they matter.
They do.
And understanding these issues is the first step towards creating a better future.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well said.
This East Coast port strike is just one story.
But it's a microcosm of so much more.
It really is.
It reflects these larger trends and challenges that we'll be facing for years to come.
So it's definitely something to keep in mind.
The world is changing, and it's up to us to shape those changes.
That's a great note to end on.
I think so.
That's the deep dive for today.
Thanks for joining us.
We'll see you next time.